I should probably read this. Okay. What is the most significant thing that the community can do to help your organization?
It's going to be hard to narrow that down because we desperately need money, a lot, because it's a very expensive program to run to feed horses and everything. But we also need a lot of volunteers. It's very volunteer intensive. And once in a while we can't even have a class because we don't have enough volunteers. But for the most part we have some wonderful volunteers. And then just getting the word out there, you know, to people know about us.
How time consuming is this, and how much labor intensive is it too?
It's quite, as a program director, as an instructor, or
either. Like
it's quite a bit. Let's just talk about having a class.
Okay.
We have usually two 40-minute classes with 15 minutes between of riding with 5 or 6 riders at a time. So we have to get all the horses prepared, have the volunteers need to be trained ahead of time, and we have everything ready when the riders come, mounting them, possibly at the wheelchair ramp or the lift or off the block, and then running the class. It's, as an instructor, we prepare the class ahead of time. We have to know our students. We have to match them to the right horse, and sometimes we don't have the right volunteers, and play the correct games for what we want to have for their goal, for their riding, and teach them to ride. Then getting them off, putting all the horses away, keeping the horses in good condition and healthy all year round. As a program director, I'm keeping all the database of all our riders and try to match them to appropriate classes so they have similar abilities. So it's quite involved. That's just probably the tip of the iceberg there.
Yeah, like if you're a horse owner, you know how much it takes.
Right.
I own 2.
Yes.
And
it's a lot of
it's
work.
a lot. So I couldn't imagine having all of these.
Right.
Okay. This one's a big one. Can you describe the differences that this program makes in the lives of your clients?
Oh, yeah, it's overwhelming actually, and this is what keeps me doing it. And we have some volunteers who've been doing it for years and years. Probably, if I could say it really, one of our volunteers said to sum up why she comes. She said she came out one day, she had a hard day, and this little girl got on the horse for the very first time. She was walking around with her, and she turned to her and said, "This is the happiest day of my whole life." I have goosebumps. She said, "That's why I do this." But we have actually had kids, like say autistic children, that are in elementary school talk for the first time.
Wow, because
Literally,
of this program?
riding a horse, they've said their first words on a horse. We have had kids that have very little trunk support that actually start sitting up on their own and using their hands better. We have kids that are not very talkative start talking to the sidewalkers or talking to the horse. We have people that are paraplegics that are getting on a horse, that are in a wheelchair their whole life, and they're sitting on a horse and they're steering the horse.
They can move.
And doing something. They are controlling something else and looking down at people rather than looking up at people and having a control of their environment. And just that freedom, that's just part of it. It's really amazing. And if people would come out and see it, they would be stuck too. They would not want to leave. This might be the same thing. But what is the most inspiring or memorable experience you have had while working here? That's hard to narrow down to, but we have a program for at-risk teenagers. And one of the first times that a group came out, and I like telling the story because it kind of sums up what we are, they come out and they volunteer, and then later they get to ride. And so they have to volunteer for a certain amount of weeks first. This young man came out, and he was kind of a rough-looking kid. I don't know their backgrounds, but they've all have stories. They're there for a reason. And he looked kind of like a big, rough, gang type of kid, you know. And he came in kind of, but then of course, then he sees the horses and he's like kind of scared, so it's kind of pulled away. But anyway, they did really well. And the next week, the counselor comes back and he says, "Come over here." She says, "Come here, I want to tell you something." She said, "When we went to leave, we're in the van going home, and this biggest kid had just tears running down his face." And she said, "What's wrong? What's wrong with you?" And he goes, they have it worse than me. It's like,
Wow.
she almost was crying herself, and every time I think about it, I could cry, because I think, you know, that's what it is. You know, he got it, and he got something out of just being there even one time, you know. And he ended up being one of our best volunteers at the end.
Wow.
Before he left.
The powers of the
So,
horse.
yeah, that was neat. I mean, and then another boy was completely, am I talking too much?
No, you're fine.
Another boy couldn't sit up, and we usually don't take people without a sitting balance, but he was little and cute. I said, okay, we'll try it. And we figured out, we finally were able to put noodles and something to hold him up. Anyway, I counted how many times he came, about 3 times, and he couldn't sit up at all. And his mother came practically crying and said, when they got home, I'm not sure how much time, the first time ever, he was sitting on the floor, and he leaned forward, picked something up, and stood up on his own.
Wow.
And they were just ecstatic. And one girl in particular talked for the first time. I wasn't here at the time. I wish I would have been. She was like in her elementary school at the time, and she went home or something. I think she said "Mama," and her mother never heard her say that before. And then she also would say the horse's name. And she's still with the program. She's like 30.
Wow.
She's still right.
Wow. So do they usually stick with it throughout their life?
Not everybody, but we have like 5 riders. We have one rider that's been here since the day we started. And actually, this letter application just came already. And she's actually in a group home now. And her father still brings her, but she's not even at home anymore. And he still makes sure she comes. And she doesn't ride any better than she did the first year, you know. So, can I get that real quick?
Yeah.